Before we jump into the episode today, I want to share something with you from my heart. First of all, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really can't tell you how much your support means to me. We've been doing the podcast now for almost 4 years. I can't even believe it. And I'm so grateful for each and every single one of you that listens, shares an episode with your friends, sends me a DM or a text message letting me know how an episode resonated with you or any aha moments. Seriously, I couldn't be more grateful to be able to create this podcast. It has been such a blessing in my life, and I love hearing the ways it's been able to provide value in yours as well. One thing you might not know is how much work it takes to be consistent with a podcast. In fact, did you know that the majority of podcasts don't make it past episode number 10? And we are well beyond that. And it's just a lot thinking of the episodes, recording them, editing them, managing the guests, making sure that everything runs smoothly and gets uploaded consistently and regularly. And so that's why I have created an amazing opportunity for you to support the podcast monetarily. And in exchange for that, you will get exclusive premium subscriber content. So for as little as $3 a month, you can become a premium subscriber of the podcast. And every month I will upload new voice-guided workouts and breathwork meditation audio for you. So that way you can work out with me, coaching you in your ears. You can also take a moment to reduce your stress and relax and come down and ground down with one of my breathwork audios. So if that is on your heart to support the podcast for as little as $3 a month to become a premium podcast subscriber, I can't tell you how much that means to me and the growth of this podcast. I appreciate you. If you're interested, click the link in the description, become a premium podcast subscriber, new content every month, and while supplies last, I'll send you an exclusive podcast coffee mug so you can have your self-love and sweat coffee every morning. I appreciate you. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast, the place where you'll get inspired to live your life unapologetically, embrace your perfect imperfections, break down barriers, and do what sets your soul on fire. I'm your host, Lunden Souza. Hey, have you grabbed your free Self-Love and Sweat monthly calendar yet? This calendar is so amazing. It comes right in your inbox every single month to help you have a little nugget of wisdom, a sweaty workout, a mindset activity, just a little something to help keep you focused and motivated and keep that momentum towards your goals. So every day when you get this calendar, you'll see a link that you can click that will lead to a podcast episode or a workout or something that will be very powerful and quick to read. And then you'll also see on the top left corner of every single day, there's a little checkbox in the calendar. And what that is that's for your one thing. You can choose one thing every month, or it can be the same, something that you want to implement, and make this something that you can easily implement, like daily meditation or getting a certain amount of steps or water, for example, and staying hydrated, and even taking your supplements. This can be something if you want to get more regular doing a particular habit and routine, you can choose what that checkbox means. So if you want your Self-Love and Sweat free monthly calendar delivered right to your inbox every month on the first of the month, go to lifelikeLondon.com/calendar, fill out the form really quickly, and you will have your calendar in your inbox within a few short minutes. That's lifelikeLondon, lifelikeLondon.com/calendar. Go get yours for free and enjoy this episode. Happy today. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about 3 areas of your life that I truly believe we need to clean up. We need to think about, we need to get realistic about, and we need to take action in these 3 areas. I meditate a lot. Meditation is a huge part of my life and a major tool that has helped me so much, not only just with mental health and well-being, but also with um, coming up with ideas and inspiration and like downloads, if you will, of things that are profound and important for me as a teacher and as a coach to share with the world. I think if any of you listening are a coach or a teacher in the online space or even in person, we're imperfect vessels, right? We don't have all the answers all the time. I'm not, a magic fairy with a magic wand that just like poof can make everybody's problems disappear. But what I do know is that I'm really good at asking questions. I'm really good at listening. I'm really good at holding space. And I'm really good at spotting patterns in people's lives and helping them realize them with love and understanding and compassion. And so through meditation and just through working through a lot of the feels, right? Like the imposter syndrome, the am I good enough? We all have those ups and downs in our lives. And what I've learned is, okay, I'm not going to believe them. I'm not going to, trust my thoughts and how I might be thinking, especially when I'm in a moment of and not feeling my best, right? I think that's one skill that's really important, is that everything that we think doesn't have to be true. But I would be lying if I said that I didn't have these unempowering thoughts sometimes, or I didn't have some of these things that come to my mind that tell me I'm not good enough. Who am I to be coaching and teaching, etc. And so meditation has been really powerful. And I was in a meditation probably 4 or 5 months ago, and it really came to me of this out in on. And this is something that you're going to hear me talk about a lot more. You're also going to hear me open up like different opportunities and programs to work on these 3 components. And so I wanted to share them with you today and kind of give you a taste of where my brain and where my heart is at when it comes to how I'm integrating what I'm learning as a coach and things that I think are important that we integrate into our lives as well. And so, out in on, let's jump right in. So the areas that we need to clean up in our lives, what comes out of our mouth, what goes into our body, and what goes on our skin. So let's start with what comes out of your mouth first. It's no secret, and maybe this is your first time listening to a podcast episode of mine, so maybe you don't know this yet, but most of you listeners know that I am a huge proponent of words. I believe that I just posted yesterday too a quote on Instagram. Oops, sorry, my volume was up on my phone, but I posted this quote on Instagram yesterday from Dr. Joe Dispenza, and the quote was, whenever you say, I am anything, you're commanding your mind and your body towards a destiny. And I work with a lot of people who have have strong attachments to these I am statements, right? And just in general, the words that come out of our mouth is a very big indicator for our model of the world and what we believe about ourselves, about the world, about others. And oftentimes we can get stuck in a lot of these beliefs, and we can find ourselves in some of the same situations over and over and over again. And so part of what I do as a master NLP practitioner and life coach is I have conversations with my clients and I listen to their words. I listen to what they say about their experiences, about their lives, about their model of the world, about people, about circumstances, and we rewrite those stories. And I highlight, okay, hey, you said that people always do this to you, right? And, a response might be from my end, okay, well, what part of you is allowing them to do something to you? What ownership do you have when somebody is doing something to you, right? So that's just an example. When I was a kid, and I guess this more actually goes into the in your body part. So I'll actually save that story for later. But yeah, the words that we say are powerful. They, if we say things like, oh, life is hard. People are always out to get me. The world is, broken and horrible, which of course, there are parts, especially now at the time of recording this, there are parts that are so broken and so horrendous. And we are going to see more of what we say, right? The words that we put out into the world are powerful. I believe we're like casting spells. That's why it's called spelling. That was a quote from Bruce Lee that I love. Just like being careful with what we say about ourselves, what we say about others. There's this, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. And I believe that's a bunch of bullshit. I think words can really hurt, and words are really powerful. And so slowing down and having more conscious communication, being more strategic with what we say, understanding that other people have their filters and their models of the world. And when we try to use our words as a way to convince others instead of connect, we completely miss the point. And so I wrote an article for Oxygen magazine a few years ago that was called The New Clean Eating, Cleaning Up Your Self-Talk, because we can be our biggest critic. And we deserve to be our biggest cheerleader. But some of that internal dialogue and the way that we communicate internally, the words that we say to ourselves and our thoughts, the words that we say to others, it's really, really profound and really powerful. And I think that we're doing ourselves and the world a disservice when we don't take the time to think about what we're saying and what we're saying to others. Now, are we going to make mistakes and say things that can be hurtful? Absolutely. And then we also get to use our words to apologize, right? And to say, oh, you're right. I'm really sorry that I said that. Here's what I meant. Now, people also can reserve the right to set boundaries surrounding us, right? Like if we keep saying certain things and then apologizing, saying certain things and then apologizing, people can also set boundaries surrounding our behaviors and our words as well. That's completely possible. But when it comes to the words that we say and what comes out of our mouth, I think what's most powerful and profound is I was talking with Aubrey Pohl. She's been on the podcast a couple times. She's a mentor of mine, and actually her and I are getting ready to do some events together. So stay tuned for that. Some in-person live events on conscious communication. And her and I were kind of brainstorming a little bit on what we wanted to share and what we wanted to bring to the table in terms of conscious communication. And I think what's really important is looking back in our family line or the people we were raised by and the way that they communicated, or maybe they didn't communicate. Because when we're 7 and under, we're largely unconscious and we're just, getting imprinted information from the way that we're raised, all these different, things that are happening that oftentimes we could just be communicating in a way that was modeled, by our parents, by the people that we were raised by. And I think that it's too superficial to say like, okay, just like change the way that you talk and everything will change, right? I believe that's toxic positivity of just like everything is awesome. I believe in language of possibility. I believe in using words that our nervous system and our body can get on board with, because quite frankly, we have this programming of how we communicate or how we might not communicate. And I think it's really helpful when we can go back in our family line and see and understand and feel through and empathize with how we might have learned to communicate or not communicate. I recently had a guest on the podcast, Dr. Tanya Stevenson, and we talked a lot about identity. And one of the things that she shared in that episode, and I'll link it in the description, is she was like, yeah, my mom modeled the silent treatment to my dad and to other people a lot. So she found herself also doing the silent treatment to her partner. And she said in the episode, and it was so profound, she was like, but that's not who I am. Like, I actually am a person who wants to communicate, who wants to connect. But I was just modeling behavior that I saw until I had the awareness that, oh, that's where it came from. And my mom probably did the silent treatment because she learned that from somebody else, that she really was able to have love and compassion for where this silent treatment behavior and the way that she modeled it, where that might have came from. And I love doing solo episodes on this podcast. I love, just talking on my own, but I especially love deep conversations that I get to have with my guests because they really help me have these aha moments for myself too. And I love when she shared that because that's sometimes what happens. We don't even realize that we're modeling behavior that we were taught, and we keep perpetuating that cycle, right? And maybe you were taught conscious communication and loving communication and how to listen and empathize. And maybe you weren't. And so there's opportunities to model, or there's opportunities to just be aware of what you are modeling, right? There was a recent situation with myself and my boyfriend where he was going through a very challenging time. And he was expressing to me a lot of his feelings. And I was visiting him in North Carolina, and we were, having a lot of discussions about what he was going through and what he was struggling with. And at one point, I said to him, like, okay, you know what? I can't with all this complaining. Like, we need to switch this to a more positive outcome, right? Like, my nervous system was just like overwhelmed with what I thought was complaining, right? And this was actually a very it ended up being a very big growth moment for our relationship, but it actually was very devastating to him and to both of us. Like, he was very, hurt by the way that he wasn't feeling supported by me, by that statement that I made, by that the communication style that I chose, right? And then at the same time, him and I have talked through this where he was able to say, okay, well, I didn't actually communicate to you how you could be supportive to me. So how could I have possibly expected you to know that, right? So him and I, we did a recent podcast. I'll link that also in the show notes too. I think that one of our biggest superpowers is communication. We will have the long, drawn out conversations to really make sure that we're both being heard and seen. And so it was really interesting when I went home to go visit my family shortly after. I love my parents. They are such great teachers for me. And so the story that I share about my father, I share with love and with the desire to provide value, not to bash my father, because I freaking love him. I think he's one of the most amazing people on the planet. But we were in the car and he asked me about something. He was like, oh yeah, what happened about this? Did you, like, he just was kind of like inquiring about something that he knew I was struggling with. And so I was in the car and I was talking with him, and I was sharing, a lot. And I was kind of, just expressing, like, I wasn't talking to him like I was a coach. When I'm preparing for these podcasts, or I'm coaching my clients, or I'm speaking on stage, or doing a Zoom presentation, I work on making things like, linear and come full circle and provide value and make a point. But I was kind of just venting in the car to him. And I was like, yeah, this and this. And then I was kind of over here talking about this. And at some point he was like, okay, you're done. Like, just stop. I'm not hearing this anymore. Like, you're just complaining. And it was like this aha moment of like, oh my gosh, that's where that communication pattern came from. That's where that I had that moment of like, oh, number one, I know where that came from. Number two, it was really painful. Like, it was really painful to be in the car expressing my feelings to my dad and then have him just cut me off because he decided he had had enough, right? He was just like, stop, like it was too much for him for whatever reason, right? And so I wrote to my boyfriend afterwards and I was like, oh my gosh, I had such a similar experience. Number one, I know where that came from. I know where that communication pattern came from. And I'm so sorry again, because here I am feeling, just dismissed by my dad and the way that he was, communicating with me. So it was like this full circle moment of, oh, now I know what my boyfriend could be feeling, and I know the source of this uh, communication style, right? And to be honest, the way it ended is my dad and we were driving to go meet my mom and my brother for lunch. And when we got in the parking lot, it was a restaurant that's very close to their house. So when I got out of the car, I said, I'm not going to lunch. I'm going to walk home. Like I need space, right? But it was interesting. It was just so interesting because we get to have those moments of like, oh, that's where that came from. I modeled that because I heard it from my dad, and he's his whole career, he was a high school teacher, a high school baseball coach. And so, yeah, I think maybe the coaching mentality of like, get back in the game, stop complaining, stop whining, whatever, like that type of dialogue was probably, very helpful for him and for the students and for the coaching, the kids that he coached, the students that he coached. And to be honest, I mean, every single time I encounter somebody that was coached by my dad, they always have like such amazing things to say about him and how he changed their life and how they are forever different because of being coached by my dad. So I know that he was onto something with the way he communicated to teenage boys who are playing baseball, but that didn't really work with me. And I remember being in the car with him and being like, Dad, when you choose to ask somebody to express how they're feeling, you don't get to put a time limit on it. You don't get to tell them when it's done just because you think it's done. When you're in a space of listening, you hold space and you just listen, right? And that also was a learning for me too, because I could see there are moments when I'm not listening, where I'm not, doing my best in that way, And then also another thing I recognize with my mom is that when there are tough conversations to be had, my mom will either like need to be doing something, like, she'll get up and like need to be like just like doing the dishes or like doing something, or she'll avoid the conversation altogether. Again, I love my mom, amazing teacher, amazing woman. She's taught me charisma. She's taught me how to connect with people. She's been a hairstylist for so many years, and all of her clients and everybody have nothing but amazing things to say on how she's been able to help them and coach them. But at the same time, we're all imperfect beings, right? And so I noticed when I was having tough conversations with my boyfriend or with others, I would always need to be doing something, whether it was like folding towels or like I would just like open up my purse and start to organize things and take everything out. And it wasn't that I wasn't listening to the person I was communicating with, but it was just a learned behavior on like when tough conversations are being had and the words are coming out of my mouth, I like need to be doing something, right? And it was that behavior that, my boyfriend wasn't feeling heard. My friends weren't feeling heard when they were trying to open up to me because I would always need to be like doing something. It was like a nervous habit, right? So I share that because it's important for us to understand that a lot of our behavior, especially the words that we say and the way that we communicate, it was modeled, right? We can do things the same as the way it was modeled. And sometimes we can do it the complete opposite, right? Like maybe if we were taught like, okay, be quiet, shh, don't communicate, you're better seen and not heard. We can go the opposite direction and just, whatever I say goes. I am, hear me roar. I'm going to be heard, I'm going to talk over people. I'm going to express, right? So we can model the same behavior. We can also model complete opposite behavior when it comes to that communication. And what I find is the best is when we can integrate it, when we can just learn from it, when we can understand where it came from, where we can have grace and love love and appreciation for where it came from. And then we can also do better on our own, right? And we can also say, oh yeah, now I understand where that came from. How can I show up even better in communication? And I have a whole course on communication. It's called Level Up Your Language, Level Up Your Life, How to Go from Talker to Communicator, where I share a lot of really great tips for, how to understand your communication style better, how to communicate with others better, how to communicate with yourself and others in a way that feels congruent for you, right? Because you still want to preserve that you-ness, right? Like I say fuck sometimes. So like in my communication, I'm going to cuss sometimes. I'm not going to be prim and proper because that's just not how I roll. So if you're interested in that, I'll link everything in the show notes there too. It's really, I think, a wonderful foundational course to help you understand that when we can change our words, we can often change our world. But I think it's important to acknowledge kind of where that might have come from. And so, cleaning up the way we talk is one area that I think is so important and so profound. And that includes, what we say to others, how we communicate boundaries, how we communicate honestly, right? I often say that for me, honesty has to be coupled with respect, right? We can be honest and not respectful, and we can be so respectful and try to please everybody that we are not being completely honest, right? So cleaning up our talk, our internal dialogue, and what comes out of our mouth is so important. And like I said before, that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me is not true. Words are important. We have to think about what we're saying. And even for me as a person who is obsessed with communication, honestly, I'll just be real. I don't really watch TV. I haven't gotten into a Netflix series. Like, I don't even know since when. I'll watch movies on an airplane sometimes, but I just watch and listen to stuff that's going to teach me more about my brain, more about communication, more about how to use my words even better. And I mess up all the time, right? There are moments where I'm like, oh, I could have done that better. How can I show up even better? And at the same time, I practice a lot. If I know I'm going to have a tough conversation, I'll practice. I'll practice with a friend. I'll practice with somebody that I trust. I'll just practice out loud at home. Like, okay, I'm going to have this tough conversation with someone. How could that look like? What am I going to say? And I think that also is really helpful because when we start to practice what we're going to say, I think oftentimes those feelings can come up too. Like if you think about a tough conversation that you want to have with your boss or your sister-in-law or your brother or something like this, when we think about having that conversation, a lot of times those feelings can come up too. And I think when we can practice having those feelings come up and practice what we're going to say, it can be really, really helpful. So that rehearsal is powerful, right? And I just feel like with a lot of my one-on-one clients, that's been the theme that's coming up is like, I want to communicate better with my boss, with my husband, with my sister-in-law, with my best friend, right? And we do a lot of that rehearsal of like, okay, well, what would the person that you want to be say? How would it come out, right? Our tonality matters, not just the words that we say, but the tone that we say them with, right? Our body language. Are we making eye contact? Are we present with the person? And I go through all of this in my course as well, because body language and mirroring and matching and being able to utilize nonverbals are also ways that we communicate too. So that's the first one that I think is so important is what comes out of our mouth, right? And oftentimes it's powerful to be able to notice what we're noticing as our internal dialogue, like what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, and be able to have a filter in terms of our core values, which is why I work with my clients one-on-one on core values to be like, okay, I'm not going to just feel something and then blurt it out, right? Because sometimes we could hurt people with our words and we can just lash out or just say the first thing that comes to mind. And that's not always the best way. Sometimes it's nice to be able to have that internal faculty that's like, okay, we're feeling this type of way. here's what we want to say, but how could we say it even better in a way that is honest, respectful, is going to drive the connection, is not going to be all about convincing, right? So what comes out of your mouth? Number one. Hey, really quick, I want to interrupt the podcast for just a minute to tell you about one of my favorite supplements for hair, skin, nails, digestive, and gut health. And that is Snap Supplements Super Greens with collagen. Now, if you're following me on social media, you've probably seen me post about this a bunch because honestly, this product tastes amazing and it's jam-packed with nutrients, like I said, to support healthy hair, skin, and nails. It helps support detoxification, a healthy immune system, and there's even probiotics in there for a healthy gut. It's non-GMO, no sugar added, soy-free, grass-fed collagen, and every scoop is going to give you 7 grams of protein. And this is why I love it, because it's not like a protein shake. It's just a scoop of powder. It tastes amazing. I put it in water, or if I want more hydration, I'll put it in coconut water and mix it up. And it's like having a nice, refreshing beverage that's packed with a bunch of super greens and protein. So what I'm super excited about is that for listening to the podcast, you'll get this discount here, nowhere else, but for listening to the podcast. You can save 25% off on all your Snap supplement purchases, including the Super Greens with collagen. And you do that by using code LUNDEN25 at checkout. That's LUNDEN 25. LUNDEN 25 to get 25% off at checkout. You can shop on snapsupplements.com or you can shop on my website, lifelikelondon.com/supplements. And you'll see there's already an additional 10% taken off. But you, because you're a podcast listener, you're going to get 25% off when you use the code LUNDEN25 at checkout. LUNDEN 25 at checkout to get your Snap supplements, super greens, and collagen, and all your Snap supplements for 25% off. Now, let's get back to the show. Number 2, like I said, out and on. What goes in your body, right? Food, supplementation, also the music that we listen to, the TV shows that we watch, right? The people that we surround ourselves with, like that's all penetrating inwards, whether we choose to believe it or not. And the story that I was starting to share that I said probably fits more in this section is like when I was a kid, there was a lot of music that I wasn't allowed to listen to. My dad was very much a proponent of being like, especially with like hip hop music and rap and things like that. There was a lot of things I just wasn't allowed, a lot of songs and even shows I wasn't allowed to watch because of the way that the words were spoken or the way that I remember I wasn't allowed to watch, what was it called? The Simpsons, because my dad didn't like how Bart like talked to his dad. I wasn't allowed to watch Married with Children, Love and Marriage. I remember watching TV, and when that show would come on, I would have to change it, right? Now, do I think that a lot of the limits that my parents put on me of what I was allowed to watch and not allowed to watch, do I think, I remember going to my aunt's house and listening to all the rap music and watching all the bad shows because I wasn't allowed to at home, right? So I think there is some balance about exposure to just like real life shit and being able to have conversations about it. And at the same time, I totally understand and understand where my dad was coming from, because he was just like, we need to listen to uplifting things. We need to build people up with our words. We need to watch shows that are modeling behavior that is empowering and impactful for other people in the world. And yeah, that's what I learned that as a kid. And then as, I got older, whatever, I really love hip hop music and just like, but it was funny because it was a few weeks ago, my boyfriend sent over a new song from Drake. And I listened to it. And in the first sentence, it said something about bitches and hoes or something like this. And I stopped it and I wrote him back and I was like, I don't like that song. I can't listen to songs like that anymore that are degrading women, that are just in general, just talking about like unempowering things, right? So I've actually, because I like hip hop, I like that vibe. I've found a lot of really awesome, empowering hip hop artists that the lyrics are like awesome and empowering and like elevating and whatever. And one of the things my boyfriend said, he was like, yeah, I didn't even notice the lyrics. I was just listening to the beat. So for him, it wasn't like, he wasn't listening to that and whatever. But it was just funny because I was like, yeah, I just can't listen to that shit anymore. Like, I want to hear good music. I want to hear songs with lyrics that are uplifting, like that are empowering, right? And so that's just something that I think of what comes into our body, right? Food as well, right? I'll be the first to say I am a huge proponent of French fries. I love French fries. I will never not eat French fries. And I know that there's a lot of convenience food and a lot of shit that we put in our body on a regular basis. And it can be a way that we are numbing what we are feeling, right? Sometimes we feel overwhelmed, frustrated, sad. A lot of traumatic events we can start to utilize food as a coping mechanism and a coping strategy. And I know that because, I work with people who have deep trauma and deep pain that use food in that way. But I think it's important to understand, it's great that food tastes good, right? And what's it gonna, like, how is the food that we're eating contributing to our purpose in the world, right? When I eat like shit, I feel like shit, right? When I eat crappy foods and eat continuously throughout the day or eat late at night, I feel sluggish. I don't feel my best. I'm probably not smiling as often. I'm not engaging with others in a positive way. I remember one time at 5 o'clock in the morning, waking up and going to Starbucks, and because we didn't have any more coffee in the house, and me and coffee, we're like, I love coffee. I love me some coffee responsibly, right? I used to drink so much, and now I have a much better, I would say, could be improved, but a much better relationship with coffee. Anyways, I go to Starbucks and I'd go through the drive-through, and I'm like, this is just one of the days where it was 5 a.m. and this red Mustang pulls up behind me. And I was like, I'm going to pay for the person behind me because I'm just going to do that, right? And so 5 o'clock in the morning, I am paying for my Americano, and I pay for the person behind me. And the lady goes, okay, that person ordered like a venti frappuccino. I don't know why the person at Starbucks decided to tell me that person's full order, but it was like 5 a.m., a venti frappuccino. It was like 6 pumps of this. It was like one of those orders that you're just like what? Like super particular, right? And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like that person's mental performance, cognitive performance, physical performance, just like blood sugar levels, like 5 o'clock in the morning. And there was 2 of them. I'm hoping that person was not having 2. I'm hoping that person was going to give that to somebody else. But that was so, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, 5 a.m. venti frappuccino, breakfast of champions, not, right? So I know it's challenging sometimes, and food can be a very challenging, topic, and it can be an addiction, but like sugar, I just think of, like how horrible it is for our brain and our body and our immune system, and how, it can really deteriorate our body. And so I had, what's her name? I got to think about it. I had a episode on the podcast, which I love that I've had so many amazing guests. I want to say her name's Jessie, but I'm going to look quickly while we're on here because I just don't want to mess it up. But we talked all about eating disorders and, numbing with food. And so I think it's Jessica Procini, Overcoming Emotional Eating, A Journey Towards Healing with Jessica Procini. So if you're struggling with what you put in your body and food and things like that, I highly suggest that you connect with her, because there are people in this world who have dealt with eating disorders and struggles surrounding binge eating and purging and a lot of these things that are real, right? And can just be a trauma response that we're unaware of and we haven't been able to deal with full force. And so connecting with her, I think, would be a beautiful resource, because it's easy to be like, okay, just eat healthy, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you might be great with your words and you might be good with the out, and maybe horrible or really struggling, not horrible, but really struggling with the in part, what goes into your body. And I think she's a powerful woman who has gone through a profound journey herself and can be really, really helpful in that. Yeah. So thinking about what goes in our body, right? Supplementation. I usually run an ad on all of my podcasts for SNAP supplements. I love SNAP supplements. I think they are phenomenal. The way that I operate is I like to take products for at least 6 months before I start recommending products. And I've been in partnership with SNAP Supplements for over 2 years now. I've had the opportunity to meet and have on the podcast their senior formulator, Amanda Lovett-Jones, and just know that they're a company of integrity that make great supplements that are awesome for our body, right? It can be so easy for us to just see like an influencer on Instagram that has this like magic tea that's supposed to like get rid of belly bloat and help us feel great. But I think it's different. And I'm proud of myself in the way that I have integrity with supplementation, where I'm like, until I've taken the products, until I've like dissected the ingredients, until I've met the people that are actually formulating, until I've met the people that are actually behind the company and I get to know them on a personal level, a shout out to Tammy at Snap Supplements, who I adore, and Amanda Lovett-Jones, who's also one of their senior formulators. I like to build those relationships. I like to know that the people that are creating and formulating what I'm putting into my body are also quality humans, right? Are also people that are out to help and not just like make a buck, So I'm really, proud of myself in that sense, that it could be easy for me to just accept money. I get a lot of offers all the time. Oh, hey, will you promote our product and we'll pay you this amount? And I'm like, I don't even know your product. I haven't used it. What's going on over here, So being mindful of what we put in our body, right? Supplementation. I'm also getting ready to do a 30-day cleanse and detoxification protocol called the Radiance Detox Kit, which was formulated by Quicksilver Scientific, Dr. Christopher Shade, who's also a friend of mine, who I know, who's an absolute genius at formulation, and at the House of Naba, which is the company that I also created my course with. They also have supplements as well. And so I'm getting ready to jump into my birthday's in November. And so I want to do the 30-day cleanse and detoxification to support my detoxification organs, to get my body in a good, clean state. For those of you, maybe my history, I've had PCOS and cystic acne that I completely reversed naturally by supporting my detoxification organs and by dealing with my emotions and past trauma. Which is very unconventional in terms of the way that Western medicine works. They wanted to put me on Accutane and birth control and all these other things where I was like, no, I'm going to work on the inside, because I know that's a reflection of what comes out on the outside, right? So what comes out of your mouth, what comes in your body. And last but not least, what we put on our body, what we put on our skin, what we put on, like even the detergents that we use, that we wash our clothes with, right? And then we put that on our bodies, right? Our skin eats too. And that's why I became so passionate about Beauty Counter, and why I started to grow my team with Beauty Counter, because they are a company of integrity. Not only are they, they have what's called a never list, which is a list of ingredients and products, ingredients in their products that can be harmful to our hormones, that can just be toxic in general. They're committed to not using them in their products, right? And also, they're not just a company that says like, oh, we're clean beauty. They're actually going out and influencing the laws and legislation and what's allowed to be in our personal care products. And, things, we just sometimes can go to like the convenience store or just see something and like, oh, anti-wrinkle cream or face wash, let's just use it. But the truth is that there's a lot of, persistent organic pollutants, which are these toxins that can come in to our body based on what we put on our skin. And they can be hormone disruptors. They can, do a lot of damage to our body internally, especially when it's accumulated, right? So it might not just be your face wash, right? But when we think about all the personal care products, especially as women, like our face wash, our shampoo and conditioner, our body wash, right? Our perfumes, right? I stopped using perfumes years ago. Our deodorant, right? Our deodorant goes underneath our arms, which is right next to our lymph. We have a lot of lymph nodes in our armpits, in our neck, in our groin area, behind our knees. And so there's a lot of areas that can get clogged and just quite frankly compromised because we're putting all of these chemicals and products to make us smell good and look good and all these different things without even understanding what's in those products that we are putting on our skin. And I'll put links to all of that in the show notes and in the description because you can shop Beauty Counter. They have, I use all of their skincare, all of their makeup. They make wonderful products and even gifts for the holidays that are super wonderful, where we can, be supporting not only a company of integrity that is creating products that are healthy to put on our skin, but they're actually going out and doing the grunt work of going to Congress, going to, moving, changing legislation, creating bills that say, hey, no, this is not okay. We can't have these products in our personal care products. And they're really setting the standard for what's allowed. And I'm just so proud to be a part of a company with some amazing women and I just got goosebumps over my whole entire body. I'm going to take a moment to acknowledge that. Like I just got goosebumps from like my head all the way to my toes, thinking about how happy and grateful I am for not only Beauty Counter, but for the women that I've been able to work with in this community. And the women that I've been able to welcome even this week onto our team. I brought in 2 new women into our business this week, which I'm just so grateful for, 2 wonderful women. That I just think it gives me the chills to think not only about products that are going to help us, I'm 34 now, I'm going to be 35 in November. I'm noticing the crow's feet and like the wrinkles kind of around my lip area and whatever. I'm appreciating them. I'm also learning to appreciate some of the gray hairs that are popping up. But of course, we want to feel good. I want my skin to be hydrated. I want to feel wonderful. I want to, I'm kind of have a more olive, darker skin tone. And so when I'm out in the sun a lot, sometimes I'll get dark spots and things like that. So I want to use products that are going to help my skin shine and help me feel good and help my skin feel vibrant, and makeup and stuff that's not, full of toxic ingredients that are going to compromise my hormone system. They're called endocrine disruptors, which basically means like they jack up our hormones. And sometimes we wonder, okay, why am I feeling like my hormones are all over the place? Now, like I said, I'm not saying that your makeup and your skincare is the reason why your hormones are in a format that they might be or maybe in disarray, but it's worth thinking about because when I was working through healing my PCOS and healing my cystic acne, I worked with an amazing coach, Diane Kaiser, and she would often describe it as like a cup. Like we're all kind of born with a toxic load in our, let's say, a cup, right? And our personal care products, our thoughts, all the things we talk about today, stress levels, the foods that we eat, that can contribute to the toxic load. And when things start to overflow and our body can't keep up with our detoxification organs can't keep up with moving things out as fast as they are coming in, then we can have that hormonal disarray and it can show up in a variety of different formats. For me, it was PCOS and it was cystic acne. And I remember I went to doctors in America, Austria, and Germany, because I lived in Austria for a while. And I remember being in the doctor's office with a OBGYN in Austria. And I was like, I feel horrible on birth control, but when I'm not on birth control, I have horrible cystic acne. I don't know what to do. I don't feel like myself. What do I do? And the OBGYN in Austria goes, well, you'll have to be on birth control forever. And I was like, what do you mean forever? Like until I'm 80 forever? And she was like, well, forever, like your body just like you have to, there was no resources that could help me understand how to support my body even better. And so when I think about, I wash my body with, I use Dr. Bronner's baby soap. I use that to wash my body. I also use that to wash my clothes. Like I'm not using Tide or Gain or all those things, which when we put them on our clothes and put it on our body, our skin eats too. Perfumes, all those things, deodorants, right? The stuff we use to clean our house, right? Like even the stuff we use to clean our countertops, then our food is touching it and then it goes in our body. And it's not to overwhelm you to think, oh my gosh, I can't touch anything. Everything is toxic. That's not my point. My point here is that we can't pretend like it's not happening. And we have to start somewhere. And I think especially for women, our personal care products and the stuff we put on our skin on a regular basis is a great place to start. So stay tuned because I'm going to be doing a lot more coaching in this space, creating programs where we can clean up what comes out of our mouth, what goes into our body, and what goes on our skin. Because like I said, that's really been coming up a lot in my meditations when I'm thinking about, okay, how do I want to coach? How do I want to show up? What's important to me? What's really making an impact in my life and in the lives of my clients? And I feel like those 3 prepositions, out, in, on, are really profound. So that's all I wanted to share with you today. All the stuff that I mentioned, I know I kind of talked about a lot of episodes that I think will be powerful for you to listen to. I'll link all of that in the description. I'll also link everything about Beauty Counter and how you can save 20% off on your first purchase. Also, my course on communication. You'll find all those links in the description. And I hope you have a beautiful day. We'll see you at the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast. Hey, do me a favor. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, give us a review. This really helps a lot. And share this with a friend. I'm only one person, and with your help, we can really spread the message of self-love and sweat and change more lives all around the world. I'm Lunden Souza, reminding you that you deserve a life full of passion, presence, and purpose, fueled by self-love and sweat. This podcast is a Hit Spot Austria production.